Listen, this is where the Bible gets.
And this is, wait a minute, hold on. Is this?
It's giving HBO 3 o'clock in the morning. It's giving Cinemax not rated.
It's Genesis 19, yeah. Go ahead.
Genesis 19 is something other than what I expected.
Hey guys, what's going on again?
Hey guys, welcome back.
Welcome back to It's Crazy or Is It God?
Is it crazy or is it God? You said it's crazy.
Oh, well, we just read something that
it is crazy.
That
is it crazy or is it God?
Yeah, we read some crazy stuff, but
yeah. It was crazy though.
Yeah, man.
It was crazy. No, what we read was crazy.
It was
okay. No, I don't know if that was God that I'm talking about.
Nope.
That wasn't God. That was just crazy. But there's some God. It's some God. It's all God's word. So anyway, all right. Yeah. Okay, so
what do we start off with? How was your week? Yeah.
Yeah. How was my week? My week was a little hectic. So, but I got through it, and actually some stuff that I had prayed about last week was like manifested this week, and it's so amazing.
Yeah.
You know, through other people, how God can work. And so I had a pretty decent week. I mean, I got through it. I got a lot of stuff done. Yeah. Starting to recognize just I have a theory on the word balance, but just starting to recognize the need for balance in my life, and what that means, because it doesn't mean what I thought it meant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just learning about myself, learning about God. I say I had a pretty good week.
Yeah, my week was sorry guys, somebody's disturbing me.
Buttercup is always, as soon as we start filming, she wants to, actually, when we sit here, we read here too. As soon as we start reading, she comes right over. Probably she wants to read the Bible.
Because animals are close to God. You know, I mean, that's what I assume.
Hey.
No. So, my week was good. What I prayed for, my week was a little hectic. There is no balance. There is, but I do like your definition of it. We'll get into that another date. But it was a good week. It was. I could have did some things better, just like everything else in life.
Yeah.
I did pray. And you know the saying that God answer your prayers is just might be the answer you want? That's what happened. So, but you have to listen, because it's what He's going to give you, right? Just like I know this is a clip that Morgan Freeman says from one of our favorite movies. It's Noah. Steve Carell's in it.
Oh, you talking about the
I forgot what the movie's called. But Steve Carell's in it. And
Bruce Almighty? Almighty?
It's Evan Almighty.
Okay.
Evan Almighty. And Morgan Freeman was like, if you ask God for patience, do you think God's going to give you patience or an opportunity to be patient?
Right.
If you ask to get closer to family, do you think God is going to make you closer to your family or give you an opportunity? And that happened this week.
Wow.
Gave me an opportunity to get closer to you without any further detail. But so that's what happens. It's just that sometimes we think that everything is glitz and glamorous.
Yeah, sometimes we think that I don't even know what you're talking about, but I know for me, sometimes I think you like praying for this shiny thing, like it's just going to be delivered at your door in an Amazon box. Like, thanks for the blessing, God.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not like that. Yeah. Holly Furtick was saying one time, was it Holly Furtick? I don't know. Sometimes He changes the situation, and sometimes He changes you. Yeah. He changes your mind about a situation. Yep. And so when you ask for something in prayer, know that God is going to use you and the things around you to do his will, but you might get what you asked for. It
Yeah.
just might not look like what you thought it was going to be. But hey,
Yeah.
look.
Yeah, like for an example, if you ask for a car and he gives you a '94 Camry, you ask for a car.
Yeah.
So,
Or even on a deeper level, because what I
Yeah.
was talking about was on a deeper level, but I get
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. That's a good explanation I have, guys. Like, oh, I need to travel, and then this car comes
hey,
along.
look,
And you're like,
it's better than walking in the snow.
Yeah, it's like, oh, whatever. I can't believe this. I need a car. And God's like, I gave you one.
Yeah.
Drive
that
it.
reminds me of that saying where the guy sends a plane, a train, and a bus.
Yeah.
And it's like, God, I thought you were going to save me. He's like, yeah, I sent you I messed it up. But anyway, people who don't know that, sorry, I messed it up for you. Maybe one day somebody will say it the right way.
Yeah. So, but that's all. So let's get into it, man. This week we read Genesis 12 to 24.
Mm-hmm.
And we discussed earlier, we found out this is in the same timeline of Job. It's around this. It's
right. It's around the
same
timeline.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when we see these, illustrations in the Bible.
Yeah.
If you have a good study Bible, or you could probably even Google some stuff, though I would just be, cautious about where you get it. But in our study Bibles, they have these cool, like, timelines and graphics and charts. And we actually looked at a couple of them because we were trying to figure out what was happening with Job. Yeah. There's something I'm going to touch on with that too, because when we start talking about Abraham or Abram, I saw something earlier that I was like, oh man, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, it was happening at the same time.
Yeah.
After Noah.
Yeah.
Right after the flood.
Yeah.
And maybe not even necessarily after Noah himself, because I can't remember how long he lived. Yeah. But it was after the flood. Yeah. And the same around the same time that this was happening to Job, this was happening with Abraham. Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly what she just said.
Yeah, it's okay. So because the flood happened, the great flood, and then time passed where Noah and his sons, the nations separated with languages, Tower of Babel, and this is after that, because now we're starting, and Job and Abraham is starting to be different places they go. Canaan, Sodom, Zoar. It's different people with different languages and different customs. Right? It's starting to be split. So that's where it happened around. Because remember, Job, Elihu was one from the same place.
I put together and connected, hopefully correctly, that...
Is he from Zora?
So Job was from Uz, and there was a person named Uz that was mentioned. Yeah. But one of his descendants or relatives, I think, was the bloodline of Elihu. I think. And he was probably still around at the time. Well, obviously, because he was the one who went to talk to Job. Yeah. But he was a younger man, remember? So if he was indeed sort of related to somebody that Abraham ran into.
Isaac's age, maybe around there.
Maybe, because Isaac and Ishmael was around the same age.
They say he was younger.
Ishmael was 13 when Isaac was born, something like that. I think so. But it's interesting because they were all young men at the time. Like, they came up together. Yep. Yeah. They were in the same graduating class.
Yeah. So now Abraham 12. So, we always ask the questions in the 365 Daily Bible Reading Plan by TeachSundaySchool.com. So right now, we're going to 12 through 15. This is interesting because I think that this is when Abram tells half-truths and he starts doing this stuff.
Yeah, Abraham was wild. Or Abram at this time was wild.
Yeah. So, one instance, I think that he went to go visit Egypt and Pharaoh, and Sarai, that was his wife, he would tell kings, that's his sister, and say, here, you can take her, but he only did it because he thought. I guess back then that was like a custom because he was like, if I give Pharaoh my sister, then they won't kill me. But God visited Pharaoh in a dream and said, hey, if you touch that man's wife, I'll curse you.
Wait, that wasn't Pharaoh. Pharaoh actually went through with it, and he was played.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Right?
Pharaoh did.
Because
yes.
Abram, look, this is why. Because Abram walking around telling people that his wife is his sister.
Which it wasn't Pharaoh's fault, you know? Like, it's...
I mean, but Pharaoh, whatever.
Did he know it was his wife and he still didn't?
He didn't know. So this is what Abram was saying to his wife. Look, I know you're a good looking lady. Yeah. He said, I know you're beautiful. If I tell people that you're my wife, surely they'll kill me. Yeah. Right? So they can have you for themselves. So when we get to these places, tell them that I'm your brother. Yeah. Yeah, and you're my sister. And so because I guess she was a baddie, so you walking around and people were not there weren't like law abiding citizens. Mm-hmm. So they would just like, oh, we'll kill you and take your girl. Yeah. And I mean it was a wild time. But in order to kind of protect himself, he would have her lie. And she was with it. And I mean, I would imagine back in the day, they're trying to survive and stuff in this age, and I'm sure that it was a logical thing because he did. When that happened, Pharaoh was nice to him. He was good to him. But then they got plagued, right? And then what happened then was he was like, why did you tell me this? He was like, take your wife and go, right? Because he sinned. He didn't know necessarily he was sinning right then in that instance. Mm-hmm. But he still caught the sin on the chin. And what's funny about that, not funny, but remember when you were saying back in, when we were talking about Job, about his boys, and they were scared because back in that day, if you sinned, you would get dealt with. Yeah. And so when Pharaoh got that plague, because I was trying to figure out, how did they know that they were being... Was God coming to everybody and telling them, you've sinned, now you must pay? Mm. Or did they just know? I don't know what the messaging was, but they knew somehow that, oh, this is because I've sinned. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. I think it depends. Because we'll get to the place where Sodom and Gomorrah, I don't know if they were thinking that. I think some people try to live righteous and God says something to them where he knows that they'll listen.
Yeah, and Abraham Abram at this time was a righteous man. And somebody had called him a priest at one point. Yeah. So he was obviously obedient too, one step at a time obedient. But he was still out here in these streets lying to these people. So, I mean, but you know, we all have our things.
Everybody has a flaw, guys. Yeah.
Abraham
and his bloodline is immaculate. And but we'll get to later in that. So the question is Melchizedek. Hopefully I'm saying that right.
Yeah, we're gonna mispronounce this stuff, so just don't listen to that or go, look it up yourself.
Melchizedek is considered one of the most intriguing characters in the Old Testament. Why? I just read this before we shot. And this is funny because I didn't, before we filmed, I didn't know who he was. So.
I think it's Melchizedek.
Melchizedek.
Okay. It's probably the only time we're going to say it right.
Yeah, so right here in our Wonderful Life application Bible, this says that he was the first priest and king of Scripture. Oh. Yeah, and it says that he was telling others to serve God, and his character was reflected in his love for God. Mm. And they said he ruled in Salem, which is the future site of Jerusalem. Wow. So he was a priest to God more high. So it's funny that I've just read this. I was like, who is that?
This is one of those charts that we was telling y'all about in this.
Yep.
Chronological life application.
Yeah, it breaks down.
It breaks down. I don't know if I should show that. I don't know if that's proprietary information. I just wanted to see what it looked like. You can't see the Bible. It's okay. It
was like,
why was he one of the most intriguing characters? Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
So I didn't know the answer to that. So good thing you knew, because I didn't.
I just read it. I didn't know that was a question until I was like, oh, I know who that is. And I guess that's why I had it on there.
Well, good thing James is paying attention, because I don't even. I mean, I remember not being able to pronounce the name.
Yeah.
But I didn't even remember.
So, also, God promised Abram blessings, and Abram and Lot. I think this is when Abram and Lot separated.
Right. Yeah, so the thing about Abram is that his dad took him, his wife, and his grandson, which is his brother's son.
Lot.
Right? Lot.
Yeah.
Away from whatever land they were in. Mm-hmm. And I think Lot actually witnessed his father die or something like that. And the grandfather passed away. So then Abram was just like, that's my nephew. Look out for him. So eventually, though, because Abram was rich too. Yeah. He was blessed. So he had all the livestock. And eventually, after Lot was getting older and he had his livestock and his servants and stuff, they were kind of running out of space. So he basically was like, hey, look, go just spread out. Like, you go up there and get your land or whatever, choose whatever you want. So he did that. And later on, okay, here's what I was noticing. God told Abram after that, after he sent Lot to find some land nearby, God told Abram to look up and look at the land, and that he was going to give him the land. He told him to get up and walk around, and I guess that's what set him out. Well, that's not what set him out on the journey, but he was basically like, this will be for your land. This will be your land and your descendants, and I'll make your name great. Yep. And
that's when he looked up on the horizon and all that, right?
Yeah, looked northeast or whatever yeah. So I thought that was interesting, because it kind of goes back to that one verse about God giving you the desires of your heart. Because I don't know that he was even thinking about that before God was like, look up. Yeah. You know what I mean? But so then when later on, Lot ended up getting captured. Right? And Abram had to go and get...
that was Genesis 14. Abram saves Lot from the. So remember, it was that big battle.
So they took Lot captive in 1412. So then that's when Melchizedek blessed Abram and gave him some stuff, right? Gave him 1/10 of all the treasure. But then Abram, good guy, he didn't want to, take too much, so he shared his spoils and stuff like that. But then, okay, this is another thing I think is interesting. After this, like whenever God or the angels come in a vision or whatever, they be saying stuff like, be not afraid.
Yep.
Right? I would imagine that's really scary, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Like, you just look up, and I don't know what distinguishes them as angels, but you have to know that, like, oh, they're interesting, different. Right? They're different. Yeah. So, but they always say, be not afraid.
Yeah, that was like when, we always hear our pastor say that when Paul was in jail.
Yeah.
Like, get up.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that part in our reading, but James just knows.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, sorry. We were just talking about what was happening.
Now let's get to a very interesting part. We're in around Genesis 16 and 18. This is the question.
This is where it gets...
How did God show compassion towards Hagar and Ishmael? So now let's go to find out who Hagar and Ishmael are. Abram and Sarai were old of age and wanted a child. And they were impatient. So,
I mean, and look, they were like 90 and 100.
90,
she was like 90, he was like almost 100.
Yeah, so it's just like, okay, look, we're going to get a child. So, Hagar was a young Egyptian servant. And Sarai was like, here, Abram.
Right, she was Sarai's servant. Hagar was.
And then in the Bible, they say he took her. I believe that means they laid down with each other. Or it says they laid down which means they had sex, guys. And
Thanks, Dad.
a baby was born named Ishmael. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, he's gonna let me take it from here because I copped the attitude a little bit when I was reading this. I didn't understand why she made it so weird. So Sarai wanted to make, being fruitful and multiplying. So I would imagine a lot of people will want children, right? She wanted a child. She didn't think that she was going to be able to have a child, so she told her servant to go and sleep with her husband. Then she gets upset. Yeah. It's like, why did you just, you know what I mean? Either you're going to do it and be okay with it, or like, well, you did this. This was your decision. So it says she looked with contempt on her mistress because she had conceived. That was the point. That was what she sent it out to do, and that's what it did, and there we are. But she's upset, and then she starts being upset with both of them, really, because she was like, I was despised and looked on you with disrespect. And this is her talking to her husband. I gave my maid into your arms, and when she realized that she had conceived, I was despised and looked on with disrespect. Oh, actually, that might be... Sorry, I misunderstood that. I was despised and looked on with disrespect. So Hagar actually kind of got a little big in her britches, like, well, I can conceive and you can't, type of thing. Yeah. Okay, I see what that means. So I misread that. See that how that can happen. So anyway,
it's like what you said earlier when we were in the kitchen. Yeah. You were like, Hagar was like, looked down on Sarai.
Yeah. Yeah. So
now it's making sense.
Yeah. Now it's kind of started thinking. So Sarai treated her harshly and humiliated her, and Hagar fled from her. Mm-hmm. Now, Hagar's basically like pregnant somewhere in the wilderness, and an angel appeared to her and basically was like, I'll greatly multiply your descendants so there'll be too many to count. Basically, go back and you're going to have a son and name him Ishmael, and because the Lord has heard you and paid attention to your suffering, go and live on. You'll kind of be blessed or something, right? Doesn't say be blessed, but it's just like, you'll have a son and name him Ishmael, and, and it kind of talks about who Ishmael is going to be when he is born and when he grows up. So God sees her and understands her pain or her suffering. So that's kind of how he shows compassion towards them. I guess just in the way, I don't know how it was looked at, just in a way that Pharaoh and some other folks got in trouble for trying to be with Sarai or Sarah. Just in that way, I wonder if Hagar was looked at as sinning too.
Yeah.
Because she was a servant and she was a woman. I don't know whether it was the thing that was, she felt like she didn't have a choice. Right. I don't know if it was a sin, but God basically looked out for them, for Hagar and Ishmael.
Yeah, because it wasn't, Ishmael didn't have nothing to.
He didn't have nothing to do with it. He's just
craziness that.
He just came into this wild situation. And this wasn't even the wildest. Like, this thing started off kind of, mild.
It gets hot.
And then it gets
hot.
Where did this start happening? It was in 17?
17.
Let's talk about Genesis 17, James.
This is the covenant, yeah.
Yeah, this is the covenant.
Yeah. So, the covenant was... God said that he's going to bless Abram. Well, the first thing is he says everybody needs to be circumcised. That's what God said. Everybody.
Which I wondered how wild that was. Yeah. Somebody come to you talk about, hey, listen,
you gotta be circumcised.
If you're going to live here around here, I need to cut.
He had to do it at like 100, yo.
That's wild.
So then he was talking about foreskins. But this is basically where circumcisions came into play. And it started with Abram. And then he basically changed his name to Abraham.
Well, he changed his name in 17. Your name is 17:5. Genesis 17:5. No longer shall your
That's
name
right,
be
you're right.
Abram, exalted father,
Right.
but your name shall be Abraham, father of a multitude.
Yeah.
So no longer is he going to be referred to as exalted father, but father of a multitude.
Yes.
And Sarai's name got changed to Sarah in 17:15.
Yep.
You shall, and this is interesting, you shall not call her name Sarai, my princess, but her name will be Sarah, princess. And as many times as he tried to give her away, yeah, that's right. You can't call her my princess no more. No,
yeah.
that was not in the Bible. I was just riffing. But that is true about the name change. So God made that promise to say, I will make you exceedingly fruitful and make nations of you. I'll make your name. He had already told him he'll make his name great back in. Wow, he told him that a while back.
Yeah.
Because Abraham, or Abram at the time when this happened, he was obedient. You know, he would just follow God's instructions. So back in Genesis 12:2, he said, I'll make you a great nation and I'll bless you abundantly and make your name great. You shall be a blessing to others. And I'll bless those who bless you. So God gave him that promise back in 12:2, but now he's telling him, I'm going to establish a family for you, right? So it was a covenant. And then they asked him, how do you think that's going to happen when we're so old?
Well, no, hold on.
Oh,
after that, he 17, said, I'm going to bless 17. You with a son.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, how are you going to bless it with a son because of her old age? And then that's when Sarah laughed. And because Isaac means laughter. And I believe that's because both of them laughed.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? So it says he said it in his heart. I don't know if he thought it, and God just knew.
Yeah, God knew it.
And Sarah, who's 90, shall bear a child. This is in 17:17. So they just didn't believe it.
Nope.
And then God was like, all right, this time next year.
Yep.
Right? And make sure everyone gets circumcised. Bye-bye. So then that happened, but then the angels came, right? To Abraham. 3 men were standing in the distance.
Yep. Now you remember that. That's when the 3 men were standing in the difference. Now we're about to get to the crazy part. So remember, this is the part when Abram was like, okay, come in, Sarah, cook for these guys. That's when they overheard Sarah laugh.
Okay.
And she was afraid to admit that she laughed.
Oh, yeah. The men came and they were saying that she's going to give birth to a child. And they said, is there anything too difficult or too wonderful for the Lord? These are the angels.
Yep.
And Sarah will have a son, is what they said. Sarah denied it. Then she laughed. So she laughed.
Like, oh my gosh.
I didn't know. She said, I did not laugh.
She was afraid.
Because she was scared,
this is God,
and the Lord said, no, but you did laugh.
You did. I heard you in your heart. She could have did it out loud, but she could have been thinking like,
this is crazy.
Come on, man. Me, but
so now this is where the story turns wild. I mean,
so listen. No, I know she doesn't want to, but this story shocked us. It was like 3 chapters. It was shocking back to back to back, and then we both realized something. So the angels that visited Abram, blessed him, said he's gonna have a child, Isaac, laughter. Abraham fed them, and then the Lord said, we're going to Sodom and Gomorrah to destroy it because it's so wicked. So Abram was like, well, okay, if it's 50 people that are righteous, are you going to save it? The Lord said, I will not destroy it. He said, what about Abram? He said, what about if it's 40 people, Lord? Because Abraham knew Lot was there. And he said, the Lord said, if it's 40 righteous people, I won't destroy it. Abram said, okay, Lord. Now, when Abram is talking to the Lord, he also says, Lord, no disrespect can I speak. Because
Mm.
it's God, guys. You're not just blaming God. Hey, man, this is God. Relax. Okay? You gotta just pump your brakes. Understand it's the Lord. You gotta come very humble. Because God, you don't know what he's liable to do. He can strike you down right there. Right? That's how he's God.
Yeah.
So then he says, Lord, what about 20 men? If it's 20 righteous men in Sodom and Gomorrah, will you strike it down? He said, no, I will not. He said, Abraham said, Lord, if it's 10 righteous men, will you strike? If it's 10 righteous men in Sodom and Gomorrah, 10, will you strike it down? No, I will not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah if it's 10 righteous men. And I think Abraham was just trying to plead with the Lord, like, look, if it's some righteous people that are righteous and faithful to you, it's meant that it can be saved.
Yeah, and it is interesting that, look, what did they say? What did our parents tell us growing up? You are who you hang around?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, we know from living in high crime areas, you don't want to be in certain areas around certain people because you could get shot at. So that was always something that I was thinking of when we're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, the wild things that were happening there. I can't even imagine why they hadn't left. I guess it was just like people just get set in their ways. But if it was so awful the way that it's explained, right, and God's got to destroy it, when he asked for those people to be saved, I'm sure he was thinking of Lot, but he was also thinking of just the people, right? Wanting to just make sure that people are okay, which was noble of Abraham. But I'm pretty sure he was thinking of Lot.
He's just like, if it's 10 righteous people, don't destroy it.
So anyway, they ended up going there.
Go ahead.
Listen, this is where the Bible gets.
And this is, wait a minute, hold on. Is this?
It's giving HBO 3 o'clock in the morning. It's giving Cinemax not rated.
It's Genesis 19, yeah. Go ahead.
Genesis 19 is something other than what I expected. This is when the two angels go to Sodom, and they're like, Lot was sitting at the gate, and when he saw him, he got up and bowed down, and obviously he knew they were angels, right? And he was like, come with me. I'll wash your feet, and I'll make sure I get something to eat and all that stuff. And they were like, no, we'll sleep in the city center. Like, whatever they were saying, like, oh no, what did they say? We should spend the night in the open plaza of the city.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they was just ready to just beat down with the get down. Like, they knew it was something going on there. And, but Lot was like, no, please, I insist. Please come to my home. I want to shelter you. So he took them to his house, and he had his daughters in there. He had, I guess, the men that the daughters were betrothed to. They were going to be engaged, I guess. And these dudes come to Lot's door.
Young and old.
Oh my gosh. They come to the door and they're like, who are those two men that you brought who came in the city tonight? Right? Like, what does it say? Bring them out to us so that we may know them intimately. What? I was like, what in the world's going on here? So, and yours said carnally, which, and then so he was like,
good.
He was like, Lot was like, no, don't mess with them. And then he even offered up his daughters. Like, I have two daughters that are basically virgins. If you want to take them instead, you can do whatever you want with them. But not these two men, which were angels. And they were like, get out of the way.
This man offered his daughters, guys.
They came close to knocking down the door. I mean, I guess that's what they were doing back in the day or whatever.
Here. This is craziness.
But when they tried to approach the angels, the angels blinded them. And they got exhausted because they couldn't see.
They pulled Lot back. Like, wait, come on.
They pulled Lot back. Like, all right, come on, get out the way.
They were about to break down the door.
Yeah. Lot was trying to save the angels, but they didn't need saving because they're angels. And they struck the people that were trying to get them with blindness. So then they couldn't even see, and they were all exhausted trying to figure out how to get out of there.
They were blind.
So the angels basically instructed Lot to get out of Sodom, and they were like, "Don't look back, and take your daughters on all this stuff." Yep. He hesitated, but they ended up having to take them by the hand.
Son-in-laws didn't go because they thought he was joking.
Ah.
They were like, "Oh, whatever." He's like, "Nah, we need to go.
We need to go." Right. So the girls that were gonna marry stayed in Sodom, and then he took his wife and his daughters, and they were supposed to go up like to the mountains or something.
Which is so
he
funny.
Actually asked, could they go somewhere else, and they were like, sure.
Yeah.
But
Zora.
then
I think so. Yeah.
Then Lot's wife turned around. They said, "Don't look back." Okay, they told him that. Don't look back. This lady then turned around and turned into a pillar of salt. I just have to imagine how shocking that is. Actually, it said what, sulfur?
They said the sulfur came from the ground, and that's what God used to.
So can you explain to us why, from your studies, from what you looked up on, what was it, Grace Digital Network or something like that, why she must have turned into that?
Well, because they said the sulfur of the ground came up, and then plus the fire. That's how.
Oh, that's how she turned into salt.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like scientific.
Yeah. And then I would imagine that, well, back the angels could have been like, told you not to look back. Or,
well, I'm asking you, why do you think she looked back from what you've now found?
Because I did get this from Grace Digital Network. It's because she was still in the world. So she missed that place.
Like she didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
And that place was so evil that it was being destroyed.
Yes.
I mean, forgive me for being so whatever, but I'm imagining like a crack house or a trap house or something like that, but the whole city, right? I'm just imagining whatever can be conjured in your mind and desired by the flesh is happening in this place. That's what I'm imagining. If it's got to be destroyed and burnt down, and people are banging down doors talking about, "Give me those two men, we want to know them intimately." Like, where are we doing? So it's just like, okay, they had to go and just shut that down, but she somehow is longing for this place, so it makes me wonder about what type of person she was. Like, she doesn't want to leave there.
Yeah. Well,
you know?
Well, I'm going to break this down. Let me break it down now.
Yeah.
So,
break it down.
Because if we think about it, no, I'm going to wait till later. Because I got to put it all together.
Okay, that's cool. All right, so I'll just keep going with this.
Guys.
And then we're going to go into your questions. But so then... This is again another Cinemax in our moment where the daughters and Lot are like in the wilderness.
Lot wanted to go to Zor, and then the angels told him to go to the mountains. He said, "I want to go to Zor." He went to Zor, and then ended up going to the mountains anyway because he was afraid.
So
that's how he ended up in the mountains with his daughters.
The firstborn of his daughters says to the younger daughter, "Our father is aging, and there's not a man on earth available to be intimate with us in the customary way, so that we may have children. Come, let us make our father drunk with wine, and we will lie with him." So they did it. Man. They did that. And what happened was they got him so drunk that he was passed out. So he didn't even know.
Didn't know. He
was basically raped. For certain, I mean, I know that sounds.
And they both got
pregnant. But he didn't even. I wondered if they finally told him at some point, like, "Oh, these are your." It's just I had to put my thinking cap on because when it was a couple of points in here where I was like, "That's incest," but then I'm like, okay, there weren't that many humans back in the day, right? So obviously there had to be some of that. If you think about Adam and Eve were the first two humans on Earth, like. They never spoke about different sets and lineages of Adams and Eves. So that means that they had to procreate somehow. So now there's 7 billion people on Earth? I don't know the number. But there's a bunch of billions of people on Earth. And we have choices now. But back in the day, this is what was happening. So it seems really odd to me, but it's just the way that the world worked back then.
So now I'm gonna put it together, right? So I was listening to Grace Digital Network, and this is very interesting. So Sodom and Gomorrah are considered the world, right? Because what what we're finding out, and what hopefully you're finding out, is how intricate the Bible is, and how things that are happening in the world are happening today are happening in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And from what we're reading, is God and the world are two separate things. And sometimes we're looking, Sodom and Gomorrah is a representation of the world, not the whole world in its totality. I'm not saying it's a Sodom and Gomorrah on every corner, but like Faith said, there are brothels and crack houses out there in just certain places where these things are going on.
Yeah.
Right? And you're a product of your environment.
Yeah, to a certain degree.
So, yeah, to a certain degree.
Yeah, because you know what? Let me just let you speak because you know what you're talking about.
No, you're a product of your environment. I don't even think it's to a certain degree. I think you're a product of your environment.
Mm-hmm.
Lot didn't come from there.
Mm-hmm.
But Lot didn't have a wife when he went there. So his wife looked back because she
had ties there.
Missed. The son-in-laws didn't leave. Right? Now we wonder, how were they entangled? Were they having sex with other men? We don't know. But their environment, listen, their environment was set up where that was okay. For instance, Lot's daughters were born there. They thought incest was okay. Oh, we'll just get him drunk and lie with him and he'll get us pregnant. No. But that, because they thought like that, that is the world, and that's why they're a product of their environment. They're thinking that's okay.
I mean, yeah, because it's dishonest if you have to get somebody drunk in order to get them to do something.
And that's okay.
It's dishonest.
They're thinking in their minds, it's okay if we got our father drunk and we want to get pregnant. That's not okay, but they're thinking it's okay because they come from Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
So you gotta be very careful of your environment, and we hear that all the time, but it's very true.
Yeah, because you, like I said, our parents used to tell us, you are who you hang around. When you are hanging around people who are, let's just say, negative, right? Don't you feel that rubbing off on you? I've noticed that for myself so much that now I'm pretty much blessed to not have many negative people around me at all. I can get through most days and not really even encounter a negative person. And that's like a blessing. It's also part of how things have just happened, the way we have things set up, but it's really interesting because when a negative person encounters you, you're either going to change them or they're going to change your mood. So it's like, same with a positive person. There's been so many times where I'm just having a good day and I'm just being myself, and then I'll encounter somebody, and then hours later somebody will come up and be like, you know what, I wasn't even having a good day, and then you were just laughing and smiling and joking, and now I'm having a better day because you were laughing. I'm just like, I'm just having fun. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to have a bad day if I can help it.
What's the saying? I'm just here so I won't get fined. It's like, I'm just naturally here, man.
I mean, really, like, what's the sense in being sad? I mean, you're going to have those times where you can't help it, but like, I just don't want to spend my days like that. But I mean, the point is, when you're around, let's say, murderers and drug dealers and rapists, right? And then you might like go to the store and steal something, and you're like, this isn't so bad, right? But if you're hanging around people who are trying to do good for the world, and they're thinking differently than the people who might be doing other things, it wouldn't even cross your mind because your environment is teaching you how to be. You're just kind of going through the motions of what you're seeing and experiencing sometimes. So that's, yeah, I think that's a good point, to be careful. So, but what I thought was interesting about this one question about, it says, people are often surprised to find that stories like that of Lot and his daughters are included in the Bible. Why was it important to be honest and truthful? And I took that in a few ways. The first way is because they mentioned, people are often surprised that these stories are mentioned in the Bible. I took it like, well, that question could mean, what would be the benefit of putting these weird HBO stories in the Bible?
Yeah, true,
right?
Man.
But for me, it's like, because it makes it real, right? You would, it's just, I keep going back to this thing of our parents, but a lot of our parents aren't going to sit there and tell us about all the dirt they did in the 70s and in the 80s, right? They're not going to tell us that they tried the same stuff we tried and they did some of the things and more some of the stuff that we did than we did. They're not going to tell us that because they want to lead by example. They want to give us a good example. So that could be the same argument that would be made for keeping some of the bad stuff out. But here's the problem with keeping some of the bad stuff out. If then I don't have any exposure to it, and then when I have exposure to it in the world, then I don't know what to do, right? So I'm thinking that it's important to, of course, keep this stuff in the Bible because it's true, and because when I'm looking at these things, the sinning that I'm doing is not it's not as egregious. Wow. So it makes me feel like, okay, well, I'm not that bad off and I'm still trying. You know what I mean? So I need to be better, but God loves me. And if God loved these people, then God can love me. Yeah, obviously he loves me too. So that's one reason. Another reason that I think that it's important to be honest and truthful based off of what Lot's daughters and Abraham we're kind of doing now. Lot's daughters and Abraham are two different types of folks because, well, they deceived their father. They were dishonest, but they were also from Sodom and Gomorrah. So I just really don't know what they were into. Abraham at least was trying to go around and do good and obey the Lord. So he lied a little bit. But here's the thing that's interesting about that. Whenever he would lie, it was like God would show these people that he lied to about Sarah being his wife. He would tell them that he was she was a sister. God would somehow reveal to these people before or after the fact that if you sin, I'm going to curse you because you're sleeping with a married woman. And they didn't know because they were lied to. But it's interesting that Abraham kept doing this. It's like he didn't trust God to have his back. But God was actually going and telling these people, like, look, don't do this, right? So I think it's important because you don't know what kind of position that you're putting someone else into, right? And so with the thing of Lot's daughters, it's like they didn't even know how things were going to end up even. So for them to go and say, we'll never find men, it's like, you don't know that. And so they took away his choice. It was non-consensual. So, I mean, it's important to be honest because you're taking away people's choices. And then they have to suffer the consequences of the choices that they didn't get to make. Okay. So, I think that's why it's important. Sorry. Long-winded answer.
I'm not going to, I don't know. So, honest and truth, two things what I got from it is God is truth, number one. Two, that's the first thing. And then, even though Abraham was who he was, he told half truths, which sometimes would put people in predicaments that wasn't their fault. It wasn't Pharaoh's fault that I didn't know this man's wife. He told me it's his sister. He put him in a bad predicament, man. And sometimes when you lie, you think it's about you, but it becomes and it's detrimental to others. So so that's why it's good to tell the truth because it's hurt. I'll give an example. Oh, tell somebody a white lie. Oh, you look good. Well, that's false because now you're supposed to be giving that person confidence. But you're lying to that person, not being honest, hurts that person in the long run. You think by telling a white lie, it's good for you, but it's going to affect that other person.
Somehow, some way.
Somehow, some way. Lying is selfish. Lying only helps the individual that is doing it and hurts others and the individual.
That's true. It is selfish.
It's selfish. It's like, I'm not going to be in my truth. I'm not going to take accountability. I'm just going to lie.
I'm just going to lie and pretend that this is,
and
I get
the king
it.
of liars is Satan. Anyway. That's how you ever grow up, I would do rack of bad stuff. My parents used to be like, don't ever lie. Lying is one of the worst things you can do. As an adult, I can see how it is. Number one, that was the first sin, lying. Number two, the devil's the king of lies. And number three, lying is so selfish and so reckless for yourself, and then it affects others.
You're saying the first sin not by man, but by the serpent.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. Don't correct that. Ever. He lied. Eat this fruit.
Yeah, it's surely it won't kill you.
Yeah.
I was thinking
it's a lie.
I was thinking the first sin was eating from the tree, but I see what you mean there.
Yeah,
it wasn't the first sin by humans. It was the first, lie, the first lie that was ever told. Let me say this too, because we just mentioned this last week. I don't think we were filming when we talked about this. The truth.
Yeah.
I don't know. Were we filming? I'm gonna say it again. So if you heard it last week, we're gonna say it again. It's just I have trouble differentiating between our actual conversations that we have just day to day and whether we said it for the show. But it's so funny because it's just our life. Like we're just talking all the time. So the truth.
Yep.
There's something about the truth that resonates, right, with people. So you could find out a bit of information and it kind of matches like a magnet the rest of the truth that you take hold to.
Yeah.
Which is why, I mean, you can't always detect a lie, but when you do detect something that is confusing or in conflict with the truth that you've accepted, it doesn't feel good. It's just like it doesn't fit. But for some reason, when you hear somebody say something that is true, even if you had never really heard it or discovered it before, you can feel the truth out of it. It's like, oh, that makes sense, right? Along with what I already know to be true.
So you like resonate.
It resonates with you.
Okay.
The truth does that in a way where it's like, you don't even really have to have all the facts. When you hear the truth, it's just attractive, right? Because it's like, oh, that makes sense. It just matches with the other things that I know to be true. So I think that's another reason why it's important to be truthful, because like you just said, I was just piggybacking off of what you said, because you're like, telling a lie can just knock some things out of whack, and you don't really know which direction or shape it is going to take.
Yeah.
But just telling that little lie that you think might be serving you in some way, you just don't know, like the butterfly effect, how that's going to go and make its way to, first of all, it makes you a liar now. Yeah. Now it's easier for you to tell a lie.
You ever notice when people lie, the lie grows?
Yeah.
It's never like...
And I'm not suggesting that I've never lied before.
Yeah, I've lied.
Okay? And I'm not suggesting that I'll never lie again.
No.
But this is just a conversation about why you should be honest and truthful.
The lie grows, yeah. So that's why I think
the lie does grow.
It grows. So that's why I think honesty and being truthful, and I mean, man, there's so many things that even Abraham, he shouldn't have, and like that we're gonna get to it, but no, Abimelech, like he told Abimelech, like, oh, so Sarah's my...
I think it's Abimelech. But like I said, it's okay.
Listen,
we're gonna mispronounce this stuff, so please.
So Abimelech,
it's okay.
He told him that Sarah was his sister, and he's like, man, God came to him in a dream, and it's like, hey, and then Abimelech was like, man, this is
why did you tell me this?
This doesn't just affect you.
Yeah, luckily Abimelech, and here's the difference might have been between him and Pharaoh. Yeah. If you have a relationship with God, God can come and talk to you.
Yeah, Abimelech didn't do it.
Did Pharaoh have a relationship with God?
I don't know.
So we haven't gotten that far yet. James knows more about the Bible than I do.
I don't know.
But it's interesting that God came to Abimelech before. So if you don't know, um, Abraham did his lying thing again, where he went and told Abimelech the same thing that he told Pharaoh's people, which was that his sister was his wife was his actual sister. And then God comes to the man Abimelech and says, "And if you sleep with her, I'll punish you because you have sinned." Mm-hmm. So then Abimelech comes back and says, "What are you talking about? Like, why did you tell me that this is your sister?" So then Abraham says, "Oh, she's my half sister. My father had her with someone else," or something like that, right? And I was just thinking to myself, is that even true? Because, like, that's not what, like, you be lying, Abraham. I don't know if I can trust you now. So I don't know if he was just saying that or if it's the truth. But, yeah, that's why it's another reason to be honest and truthful, because now no one's going to trust what you're saying. And if you are telling the truth, then I don't even trust you. You know? So anyway. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. I'm sorry.
Now we're going to end up on a very interesting note. So,
yes.
Isaac is born.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Isaac is born.
So,
and
Isaac is the son of
Abraham and Sarah, the one that God promised.
And Isaac has a half-brother, remember, from Hagar and Abraham. Mm-hmm. Hagar, the servant. And his name is Ishmael. So the half-brothers are Ishmael and Isaac. That's important because Ishmael, like we said, Ishmael came into this world not of his own choice. Kids are kids. We bring them into situations and they have to deal with those situations. And so basically Ishmael was about 12 or 13 and Isaac is born and he's being weaned, which I know what weaned means now, but I don't know if they're talking about the same thing when they say that. Ishmael, the older son, was mocking Isaac, and that caused Sarah to become irritated and say, "Get them out of here." So she basically made Abraham go and send them on their way. His Hagar and his other son, like, y'all gotta get out of here because my wife ain't happy. So when that happened, I just thought that was interesting because I could see how he could be jealous. Ishmael's coming into this world. He didn't have to be here. At first, before another son was born, he was the heir to everything. He was going to be treated well. He's the son of Abraham. And now that him and Sarah have basically their promised child in their wedlock, in their marriage, now Ishmael's kind of pushed off to the side. We only thought we needed you. And so it talks about how he's an archer. He's good at archery, and he's really strong, and he's like a donkey or whatever that means, I guess. Yeah, he's strong.
He's like a,
But he just came into that situation. I think it's relevant to mention that because I think some things are going to happen with him later, that we didn't read this time. But yeah, so what happens after that?
Then the sacrifice.
Yeah, this was wild.
Genesis. Now, some stuff happened between Abimelech and Abraham, but that was just a covenant between both of them, and how Abraham gave him 7 lambs, and Abimelech blessed him, and basically he blessed Abram with what he has now, or what Isaac had. Now, this is why we love our show, Is It Crazy or Is It God? Listen to this. And this is what makes Abraham so great. Abraham's son Isaac, who Abraham prayed for, he even had, Abraham and Sarah wanted Isaac so bad, they even had an agreement that Abraham was going to sleep with the servant just to have a child.
Just to have a child. They wanted a child that badly. Right?
God told Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your only son to me. And you know what Abram did? Abraham said, okay. He took his servants and he went out. And I think he asked the Lord, tell me where to go. He said, yep, go to the mountains. And I'll tell you. He took his son. His son was like, Dad, there are no sheep. Ugh.
Yeah, what he didn't say. He didn't say it, but he was like, "Where's the sacrifice?"
Where's the sacrifice?
Poor kid.
Abraham was like, "Oh, don't worry."
He didn't say that, but I was just thinking
just like, "Yeah, don't worry." He told the servants me and my son are gonna go make a sacrifice, and we'll be back.
He says, "But where's the lamb for the burnt offering?"
Yeah,
that's not funny.
It's real, man.
It sounds like something a kid would say, "But
Dad, where's the lamb?" And so what Abraham did is Abraham tied up his son on an altar. And
took the wood
and had a knife and was about to sacrifice. The Lord said, stop. Now,
don't harm the boy.
Don't harm the boy. For he is, I think they said, for he is blessed. And they said that they said that he is blessed, and basically he passed his son.
Yeah, for now I know that if you fear God with reverence and profound respect, that you fear God with reverence. It was an angel of the Lord called to him from heaven to say, Abraham, Abraham. And he was like, don't kill him. We just wanted to see if he was going to do it.
Yeah. Like, that's how fearful Abraham was of the Lord. He was going to sacrifice his only son that he prayed 100 years for to God because God said so. And that's why he's Abraham.
Yeah, and then luckily he didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was really tough because I don't know anybody who would do that. Yeah. I mean, you just don't know. And this is another thing we talked about, because when you're visited from God, like, I guess you just know, right? Like, I feel like, I can't say I've been visited from God, but I've definitely heard him give me a direction or pull me in a direction. So I've never heard God's voice or stuff like that. But some people, I'm sure, have. And when they say they saw an angel in a dream and things like that, like, I don't recall any of those experiences. But I do feel like I've had certain dreams that showed me something or led me in a direction. Which is interesting. Now that I'm on this subject, I was looking into something because I had a weird dream a little while ago after we had started reading the Bible, I think. After we started on this project on IICIIG. But I had a weird dream and I was like, and it scared me to the point where I was like, I don't want to go back to sleep right now. You ever have one of those? You wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, that didn't feel good. Like, I don't want to go back and seep into that dream. Because it was just that kind of like, off, whatever. So I stayed up that night for a little while, but then when I finally went back to sleep, like, I had prayed and everything before I went back to sleep. It must have been something like, that I thought that the enemy was messing with me or something. So anyway, before I went to sleep, I was Googling on my phone, what does this mean in a dream? Whatever it was the thing with the bus. The guy was on the bus and he was like, oh, I'm going to kill them. And then he did it and everybody started screaming. And the guards were, it was a weird dream. Anyway, from that, I found out that when you have a weird dream, and you know how you go to these websites and they'll tell you what your dream meant? It's probably better that this website that I looked at this night was like, look and see what the Bible says about that dream. What does the Bible say about, like, people dream about, like, spiders or snakes or whatever, and you look it up and it says something on the internet about it. But if you look up what the Bible says about spiders or snakes, or if it's in there, whatever you dreamed about, right, that's probably what you should be probably paying attention to more than whatever comes up on the internet. I learned that night from that bad dream, but I was like, that's not a bad thing to share with others. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
Did I cut you off of what you were saying?
No. Yeah. I was going to say this. Wait a minute.
The burnt offering thing.
Yeah, the burnt offering that Abraham found a ram in the bushes.
And they sacrificed the ram instead.
Not a ram.
And it was like a blessing that, I don't have to kill my son.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of burnt offerings.
It's a lot of burnt offerings. Do you want to say your comment that I told you not to say?
I'm not going to say it. Nah.
Okay,
That's
because
why I
we're
said
having some
you have
issues
to
over
pray.
here about PETA and look, things were happening in these days that don't necessarily happen the present day. But
Sacrificing
yeah,
animals. There's probably some other
it's a
things.
lot of stuff.
Probably when people come to your house, is we were talking about this custom for. This is going to lead right into a custom of washing feet. People don't do that now, but back then,
Right. I'm going to do that next time somebody comes over. I'm going to be like, let me wash your feet.
I wonder what they're going to say.
They'd be like, I'll see you later.
Yeah. Because I think back then.
And I'm not going to do that, by the way.
People walking around probably barefoot.
Yeah, or with those sandals and stuff,
so,
right?
There's,
it's like sit down and take a rest.
Yeah.
Make you something
and
to eat.
And there was a lot of unleavened bread. Unleavened bread.
I don't really know how to pronounce it.
But I can't. So it was a lot. And I'm thinking that's because maybe there's no yeast and it's just like, all right, it's quick, it's filling. And unleavened bread looks like naan. Right.
Or like flatbread.
Flatbread. So it's just interesting for that to say. Now we're gonna get into.
Yeah. So Sarah, his wife, passed away. Abraham's wife. He made these arrangements to bury her in a cave, and everybody treated Abraham with respect because he was known as a man of God. Yeah. And basically, Abraham's wife passed away. He buried her in a cave, and then he said.
Oh, I wanted to say this about caves. Caves, I guess, were something back then, because I know Jesus was buried in a cave. He rose again, guys, but initially he was buried in a cave. Sarah was buried in a cave. We're probably going to see a lot of other people
buried in a cave.
So it's just very interesting.
There's something to look into. I mean, some of this stuff is just interesting. And I don't know if we said this in the beginning of the show. We always just like to say that our goal is for you to read along with us. We want to know your perspective. We want to know what you think. So that's a good question for our audience. What do you think the relevance of burying someone in a cave is? Yeah. Right? And
it's a good question.
Yeah. What do you think the relevance of that is? What do you think that means?
Yeah.
So another thing, so what happened was after he buried his wife, he was getting older in age, and he told one of his servants to go and find a wife for his son Isaac. Yeah. Now, when he gave him instructions to go find his son, he was specific. He was like, go back to the land of my relatives. Don't go to Canaan, right? And didn't he say that? He was like, don't go around here. I don't know what he said.
I think he said, don't go to the land that he left. Him and Lot left, I think.
He's like, yeah, whatever you do.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what he said. He said, don't take my son back there.
To Mesopotamia.
Yeah, he was like, go find a wife. He was like, the servant was like, but what if she doesn't want to come back with me? Should I take your son and go get her? He's like, whoa, don't take my son there. Whatever you do, basically. Like, don't take my son there. You must never take my son back there. That's in Genesis 24:8. If the woman is not willing to follow you to this land, then you will be free from this, my oath, and blameless. Only you must never take my son back there. I don't know what that is. Yeah. But he was very adamant to say that because he said it twice. So then, basically, the servant follows directions.
Yeah, he said he didn't want his daughters to marry. He said, okay. He said, based on the experience of inhabitants of Canaan, whether the Sodomites or Philistines, Abram did not want Isaac to marry a woman from the daughters of Canaanites. Instead, she must come from his relatives 100 miles away. That's what it is. He didn't want, you're right. But I didn't know why. So
I didn't either.
That's why.
See, a lot of this stuff is so hard. You're not going to memorize everything in the Bible.
You probably witnessed so many stuff that was going on.
And look at what we just said about Lot's daughters.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you've been exposed to so much. I really don't know what you're capable of. Yeah. Right? So maybe he just was like nah, they're from the wrong side of the tracks. Yeah. We got to,
because I can only assume that you're right. The wrong side of the track.
I mean, not the way that it would mean today. Yeah. That would be discrimination today. And I wouldn't tell my son that you should marry her because she's from, Maryland or something like that, right? Yeah. But I think okay, here's the thing, because he had some promises with God, and so he obviously had some insight into what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether he was just being picky or whether he was like, oh, this is for purpose.
Yeah.
Right? Follow my instructions, because he was very direct and he was older. So the servant, what's his name? Eliezer of Damascus. I don't know how to say his name either. So the servant was very obedient to Abraham.
Yep.
He went, he had, prayed. He was like, okay. He got to where the water well was, where the women would come out at dusk and get water. And he was like, he went to the town that he told them to go to. And he was like, okay. He sat there and he was like, okay, God, if you send out these women or whoever comes out, the first woman that offers me water and offers my camels to drink water, that's probably the gal for Isaac, right? And so lo and behold, here comes this pretty woman with her water jug on her shoulder, and she encounters the servant, and he's like, may I please have some of your water? And she had went and filled the thing up first and then came back. It was like, he was like, can I have some of your water? And she was like, sure. She quickly brought it down for him to have a drink. Then she was like, I'll feed your camels water too. You know what I mean? So then he was like, okay. And he praised God. He was like, I think this is the person. Yada yada. So then he goes to the he asked her who her family is.
Yeah.
And we had to work out on paper exactly who she was. So she was related to them, but she was like a second cousin or something like that, right? Her grandfather was Abraham's brother. But remember, Isaac, Abraham's son, is young because Abraham was so old when they conceived him. So they're probably right around the same age, I'm assuming. Anyway, the servant goes back to the house. They treat him well. They probably wash his feet and everything, I think they said. And then they was about to eat, and he was like, wait a minute, let me state my business before we eat, right? Probably just like, let me get down to it, because I came here for a reason. I ain't trying to be like just chilling. So he told them why he came there and what he talked to God about, and how Rebecca was her name. How she had offered the water, and then she gave some to the camels, and he got them to agree to, we're going to take her back for Isaac. And then what happened?
Then they were like, wait a minute.
So the next day when he gets up,
let's
they're
have
like
10 days.
Like, yeah, let's just wait 10 days to think about this. And he was like, what's... He's like, that's not what we said last night. So he's like, they're like, okay, let's just ask her. So they go and ask her, hey, you want to go with this guy to meet your new husband or whatever? And she says, I'll go. And
then they left.
And they left, and they talked about how, she saw Isaac in the distance, and he saw her, and she asked who he was, and then she covered her face in a veil, because I guess that was customary. And then they got together, and he took her as his wife, and that's where we ended in Genesis, at the end of Genesis 24. This was a wild week of reading.
Yes, it was. It was a lot going on.
It was a lot going on. I could barely believe that I was reading the Bible. It was really... And
this is just the beginning.
It's just the beginning.
There's going to be a lot that goes on that we're going to find out. And it's awesome, because it's the truth. So
yeah. And I need to know this stuff. I find myself relating to these people in certain ways, and I'm like, certain things start to make sense to me. Oh,
not from Sodom and Gomorrah.
Not from Sodom and Gomorrah, but kind of as an example of what to avoid, or you know what I mean?
It's crazy. Yes, in the Bible, men wanted men. And it is in Genesis.
And the thing I think that is really prevalent is that the really interesting is that they were trying to take him. They were trying to take the man.
They were trying to take the angels.
And I was like, is this Oz or is this Sodom and Gomorrah? Anyway, all right. So here's the deal. I
couldn't believe when I was reading it. And then after that, Lot's daughters was just like, oh, come on, man. got your father drunk. That
Yeah, that was wild. And then the mom
crazy.
turning into the salt. It was just kind of, which was probably ashes or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like that was just an example. But see, this is why I need to be reading this, because I'm putting these pieces together and it all makes sense to me. Even some things that you found on the Grace Digital Network.
Yeah, it was comparing Sodom and Gomorrah to the world.
It's like when you start to look into this and you've read it for yourself, which we encourage you to do. That is our mission, to encounter and encourage people to read along with us. We want to hear from you. We want this to be a conversation that we're having together, which I'm about to tell you what we're reading next week, and I'll also tweet it. But we just want you guys to read with us. We don't want you to take our word for it. We want you to go to the source.
Please go
read
to
your
the
Bible
source and read the Bible, guys.
So next week we're going to be reading Genesis 25 through Genesis 34.
All right.
So that was another episode of As Crazy as a God. We're so grateful that you're joining us. And we hope you're reading along with us. This is super interesting.
It is.
It's just only getting more interesting. So.
All right, guys. I'm going to end this off like I always do. Don't take our word for it. Go to the source. Read your Bible. Peace.
Bye.